Hello everybody and welcome to Insider's Guide. Today we're wrapping up our discussion of Zermatt, one of the most beautiful ski resorts in Europe. With Zermatt, there's a lot to talk about, so this Insider's Guide is split into 3 parts. In this part, we'll cover Matterhorn Glacier Paradise and Schwarzsee. If you haven't already, go check out part A to get some great background on Zermatt. So with that, let's finish an Insider's Guide to Ski Resorts, Zermatt. We're now going to talk about Matterhorn Glacier Paradise and Schwarzsee, the most iconic parts of the mountain. To start off your day here, you can either board the first stage of the Matterhorn Express gondola or the adjacent tram. Usually, the resort will only be running the gondola and only use the tram if crowds at the base get out of hand. Either way, both lifts lead to the Fury mid-station, and you'll have to disembark to ride the second stages of either lift. The Fury mid-station is one of the most critical junctions at the resort, and it primarily serves 2 purposes. 1. Transferring between Gornergrat and Matterhorn Glacier Paradise, and 2. Getting you higher up Matterhorn Glacier Paradise. From Fury, you can ride the Riffelberg Express gondola that we previously discussed all the way up to Riffelberg to access the Gornergrat train. If you're coming the other way around, you can download the Riffelberg Express gondola all the way down to Fury. If you wanted to ski down from Riffelberg, you can take the number 39 to number 41 to number 42 trail combination we previously discussed to the Riffelberg Express gondola's mid-station at Schweigmatten. From here, you can ride the second leg of the gondola to Fury. Excluding the Riffelberg gondola, similar to the base, there are 2 lifts out of Fury. The second stage of the Matterhorn Express gondola and the second stage to the tram. Both end up at the same destination, Trockener Steg. The difference is that the tram is much more direct, as the gondola has 3 mid-stations before reaching its final destination. Like the base, however, they usually only run one lift or the other unless crowds get unmanageable. The gondola will not operate in high winds, but the tram will. In general, if the tram is running, I'd recommend taking it unless you're trying to get to Schwarzsee and the Hurley Pod, in which case you must take the gondola. Outside of busy times and high winds, however, you'll be forced to take the gondola, which still isn't too terribly long of a ride. For now, let's talk about each of the gondola's mid-stations. The first one at Aerolide is a load-only station, so if you're coming from this number 56 trail for example, and if you want to download the gondola, you'll have to board the Aerolide station, ride up to the Schwarzsee station, get off, and download from there. The mid-station also services this one freeride trail, number 58. It's a charming little glade run that passes a few cabins, but due to the elevation, I generally wouldn't recommend it. Moving up to the Schwarzsee mid-station, you'll have to get off here if you'd like to access the Hurley Pod. This pod is not accessible from any other part of the mountain, so getting off at Schwarzsee is the only way to reach it. This number 51 run leads right from the mid-station into the heart of the Hurley Pod. Hurley itself is a fast bubble 6-pack with a unique 180-degree loading terminal and outstanding views of the Matterhorn as you get closer to the top of the lift. If you're unsure on how to load the lift, take a minute and watch other people do it before you go. In general, the Hurley Pod is fun, but I found it suffers from having a lower elevation, which results in the snow quality being a bit poorer than higher up. This trail, number 55, allows you to merge onto the number 69 trail, which we'll discuss later on, and follow it down to the gondola mid-station at Furg. This is the most efficient way to get out of the Hurley Pod, and we'll talk about the other 2 methods in just a bit. Number 54 is just a straightforward steep cruiser. It's a good trail, but it can get a touch icy just due to the pitch. There's an unmarked gully that goes right under the lift that could be home to some outstanding powder. However, it is off-piste, so there is AVI danger. Number 53 starts out very flat at the top, but steepens once it drops over this ridge. I prefer 54 over it. I'm not sure why number 56 is rated blue, since there are no blue trails that lead to it, but it's essentially a very flat catwalk that leads to the Aerolide mid-station. As mentioned earlier, you'll have to load the gondola here and can only download once you've reached the Schwarzsee mid-station. Past the intersection for number 56, you'll reach another fork where you can go skiers right for number 51 and skiers left for number 52. Even though it's a bit flatter, I found the snow quality on number 52 to be much better, and the views it provides of the Matterhorn are incredible, so I'd recommend taking it over number 51. In addition, number 52 leads to this chalet, Staffelalp, which literally sits right underneath the Matterhorn. Like all the other chalets on the mountain, the food quality here is exceptional, and I'd highly recommend a stop if you're looking to take a break in this area. Both number 51 and number 52 lead back to the Hurley lift, which you can take up for another lap. Now, on a few days of my visit, Number 55 and number 56 were both closed, so the only way out of the Hurley pod was the lower half of number 51 and 52. As you can see, these two trails basically combine into one super flat catwalk that leads all the way back into Furi. If you can avoid it, I'd highly recommend not doing this catwalk because it's even a bit uphill towards the very end, but sometimes you will be forced to take it. In these times, taking number 51 is a bit more direct and you'll be able to carry more speed into the catwalk, so I'd recommend doing it over number 52. Finally, these freeride trails, number 59 and 60, are pretty fun. Number 59 is a wide open gully, and number 60 is a sort of gladed gully run, if you will. However, they both suffer from the same snow quality issues as number 58, so I'd recommend not trying them unless there's been a recent dump. Just for context for my North American viewers, all three of these runs would probably earn the equivalent rating of a Rockies single black diamond. Zermatt is not really the resort for very challenging inbounds terrain, but if conditions are nice, these pistes can be a nice change of pace from all the other groomers on the mountain. Okay, let's move on to the Furg midstation. This midstation is primarily used to lap the upper part of the second stage of the Matterhorn Express gondola without going all the way back down to Furi via this number 62 trail. Speaking of number 62, I'd recommend avoiding it at all costs. It gets extremely icy and congested with inexperienced skiers and can be arguably dangerous at times. It's much better to just download the gondola than having to deal with number 62. Number 62 is a fun trail when conditions are good though, so if you'd like to try it, I'd recommend doing it early on. This bubble quad adjacent to the gondola is essentially a reliever lift that ends just a bit below the gondola's final station. However, the Furg midstation of the gondola rarely seats crowds, and since you get a bit more vert taking it over the chairlift, I'd recommend doing that. While these red pistes, numbers 63, 64, 65, and 66 are some of the busier runs on the mountain, they are all excellent wide open cruisers. All of them lead back to Furg, and as mentioned previously, I'd recommend lapping all of them via the gondola. Number 67 and 68 are two freeride trails that go directly under the gondola. These trails can actually hold some great snow, but it's best to scope them out from the lift since snow coverage can look great at the top, but deteriorate significantly towards the bottom. Trocaner Steg is where the Matterhorn Express gondola and tram meet up. From here, you have two options. You can ride up either a tram or a larger gondola to the summit of the Klein Matterhorn, which is the highest peak at the resort. Your other option is to ski towards this bubble lift, Friggsattel Gletscherbahn. We'll talk about the chairlift first, and then the summit terrain. Friggsattel Gletscherbahn offers some of the best upper mountain terrain at the resort. As we'll discuss shortly, the summit terrain is very inconsistently open in the early season, and as such, Friggsattel Gletscherbahn is often where you'll find the best snow conditions at the resort just due to its sheer elevation. Number 72 and number 71 are two marked pistes that go straight down either side of the lift line. In general, I've noticed that number 72 sees slightly more traffic than number 71. Both runs are wide open and long, although not as steep as you'd expect. As such, it's important to try and keep up some speed towards the bottom of the run when things get pretty flat. Other than this number 75 trail, which is essentially a more direct route to reach the number 66 piste, you'll notice that there are two paths to get back to the lift. If the lift line is empty, then I'd recommend taking the skier's left path, but if the lift is busy, then take the skier's right path. The reasoning behind this is that when it's empty, you can build up some speed on the skier's left path to power your way all the way up onto the lift, but if there's people in the way, not so much. So you'll go around on the skier's right, which is a less direct route, but drops you immediately at the lift. To the skier's right of the number 72 trail is a terrain park, denoted by this symbol on the trail map. Zermatt isn't quite known for its exceptional freestyle experience, but this park is actually pretty decent. The number 71 and number 69 trails both provide excellent views of the Matterhorn, and are both worth doing at least once. However, they will fun you into the Furg midstation and are therefore a bit of a longer lap. Both trails are quite flat and even have some uphill sections, so make sure to keep your speed up. In all honesty, the best part of the Friggsattel Gletscherbahn is all the adjacent off-piste you have access to. Now do remember that this terrain is very dangerous. There's not only an avalanche risk, but also a risk of falling into crevasses since you are on a glacier. Make sure to have all the requisite gear and knowledge before venturing off-piste in this area. That being said, from my personal experience, the low angle and filled-in nature of the glacier make it relatively safe to ski. Specifically, I found the bowl right above the number 70 piste to be home to fresh tracks for days despite being right next to the lift. Most people at Zermatt tend to stay on piste, so even lines right next to the lift can stay untouched for a long time. Finally, let's talk about the summit terrain. Like the base and Furi, you have two options, a tram and a unique cable car. Also, like the aforementioned areas, the resort typically only runs one or the other, and it's usually the cable car, which is essentially a very large gondola. The ride up is absolutely stunning, providing outstanding views of the surrounding glaciers and mountains. There are several attractions at the very top, including an ice cave, restaurant, and observation deck. At 12,740 feet, this is the highest summit elevation of any ski resort in Europe, so the snow quality is usually fantastic. However, especially in the earlier parts of the season, the summit is extremely inconsistently open, whether it be high winds, avalanche danger, etc. Sometimes they'll allow you to ride the summit lift but without your skis, which can be quite frustrating. The summit is much more frequently open in the later parts of the season when conditions have become more mild. The summit is also open late into the summer season and is typically the last part of the ski resort to close due to its high elevation. Once you reach the summit, you can either ride this new cable car or ski down and take this T-bar to access the number 7 trail on the Italian side of the mountain, although only do this if you have the correct ticket. The summit terrain is essentially one large bowl serviced by a handful of T-bars. This highest T-bar is the most inconsistently open, while the others are open more often. In general, I'm not a huge fan of lapping any of the summit runs individually through the T-bars since they feel too short. I prefer stacking them with runs further down for one super long lap back down to Trockenir Steg or even further down. I do want to highlight number 85A since it's a particularly steep and fun section of the bowl. I much prefer it to number 85, which is essentially a groomed road. Number 83 and number 84 are pretty similar and are short and mellow cruisers. Number 88 and number 87 are both roads that lead to and from Cervinia, but beginners shouldn't ski them since there are no other blue trails off the summit to get lower down. Number 80 is my favorite T-bar serviced red piste off the summit since it's a bit longer than the other runs here. If you hang skiers left of the number 80 piste, you'll merge onto the number 6 trail on the Italian side. All of the summit runs filter onto the number 73 piste, which is a fun but mellow cruiser that leads back to Trockenir Steg. Alright, that about wraps it up for Zermatt. If you haven't already, go check out parts A and B to hear about the rest of Zermatt, or go check out another episode of Insider's Guide, all about other fine resorts around the world. As always, please leave any questions down below. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please consider subscribing to help support this stream. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out.